My name is Maki. I'm a writer, editor, and theatre maker from Melbourne on Wurundjeri country in Australia. Feminism wasn't explicitly mentioned in my household. I think I discovered it on my own. But I think my parents were encouraging in their own way, in that they very much kind of wanted me to succeed in my own way. They were encouraging. I think it was patriarchal in a sense, not in a very aggressive sense, but I think it conformed to those norms of having the father who is the careerist, the breadwinner, and the mother is cooking, is the primary caregiver. I think those very these normative expectations were upheld. Japanese culture is very patriarchal, and I suppose that was practiced in the household. I think Japan, although I haven't lived there, I visit there a lot and have lived there temporarily, and I have a knowledge of the culture, of course, because I grew up in it. So it's very patriarchal, and I think they have a long way to go. I actually heard the word feminism for the first time from my high school modern history teacher. And she refused to call history anything but her story. And she was quite eccentric, and I thought she was hilarious. But a lot of the people in the school, my fellow students, would call her crazy, especially the boys, and she was a bit of a figure, I guess, in the school, but I thought she was really interesting, and she had all these feminist comics plastered all over the walls of her classroom, and that's when I first heard the word feminism. I was 15, so it definitely left an impression on me, and I was kind of like, what is this? And starting to learn about it for the first time. As I entered university and I came to learn more about feminist theory and reading these writers, it suddenly was like an aha moment, and all these things became clear to me, and I became very interested in feminist writing, and for instance, Simone de Beauvoir, Judith Butler, Helene Cixous, all these people really influenced me. And and I am a playwright, so I am very much inspired by I think the artists who are most inspiring to me have always been women, and I think making the most interesting work and have a style of writing which to me feels experimental and very I think is resisting these kind of mainstream ways of writing and storytelling and these grand narrative structures, which I think is really fascinating. The first play I worked on was very much inspired by ecofeminism and ideas of feminist activism within the end of days in our current world of climate crisis, especially talking now, and I'm watching these videos of France and Spain being on fire, which is crazy to me that it's happening in Europe now as well, because in Australia it has been happening for a while, so this is really scary. So anyway, this play followed these three young women who are feminists, climate activists, and are trying to change the world. But it's a kind of comedy in a way. I read an interesting book by a teacher at a university called Ghassan Haj, and he talks about how racism is an environmental threat, and colonialism isn't just a political, socio-political thing. It's an environmental, very real environmental threat that for instance, in Australia has damaged the ecosystem so much. It has brought all these, flora and fauna from Europe that shouldn't be there and has destroyed the environment. So yeah, it's a real environmental threat, and I think all of these things are interconnected. And I think feminism, for instance, has a important role to play in the climate crisis. I think that feminist thinking is about care for each other. It's about it's tied with anti-colonialism, which is then tied with environmental rights, as I mentioned. So I think they're all interconnected, and that like feminism can be linked to all of these things. That second project I worked on was inspired by a Japanese folk tale called Obaste Yama that is follows an elderly woman who is abandoned by her son because there is a practice in this village of abandoning elderly women once they become a certain age. And I guess I was fascinated in like the ageism and how women are perceived differently once they reach a certain age. And I think people have written about this, that there are kind of like women when they're seen as like a sexual reproductive being is almost like a different type of person to women after that age. So I was really fascinated in this, and wrote a play, like a contemporary adaptation of this play, this no drama loosely inspired by it, and bringing it into the current day, but also inspired by my own experience living in Australia as a Japanese person, someone who's of the diaspora and is removed from that culture, and what this story means to me living in the West. In Australia as well, there is quite a like macho like culture, or this idea of blokiness, which is also tied to very much like white masculinity and certain stereotypes about how men should be. It's a crazy world we're living in, and the most joy I've found is in these like feminist forms of care, even just like sharing a meal together, doing things for my friends. Also the queer community, I think it has really in a way like this might sound dramatic, but has saved me and has really made me feel safe and comfortable. Yeah, queer performance, queer drama, this kind of like, maybe it's like a self-deprecating humor, because I think, maybe queer people are the funniest people, because you have to use humor to get through it, because, a lot of the experience is very dark. So I think humor allows you to move through that and try and establish a sense of lightness from, a very heavy, what can be a heavy experience. Yeah. Learning about these things later and being like, oh, finally, like there's actually this whole world of people that understand me. And I found that so amazing and enlightening personally. Yeah. Someone mentioned that critical theory makes apparent what you already know, and I thought that was very interesting and resonated with me, because that was like with feminism. I think I had this kind of gut instinct, like for instance when I was a teenager and I was first hearing about this word, I didn't really know what it was yet, but I had feelings about things like that made me feel like why this doesn't feel quite right, or why are things this way, but I didn't really have the language to speak about it. So I think once I started reading books about feminism and learning more about things, and I started to establish the language to really understand and speak about it, I felt like, oh, I already knew these things, I just can now speak about it.